Well, thank you, Richard, and thank you, Anne, for inviting me today. And I particularly thank Richard, actually, because the transaction that he's talking about, which I'll introduce in a couple of minutes, was sealed yesterday afternoon. And I think there's probably some orchestration between him and Anne to make sure that we could announce it today. But as Richard mentioned, we are the leading provider of electric vehicle charging equipment in Europe. This is actually getting to be quite a mature business, probably running slightly ahead of the advent of electric cars on the mass market. And you see a few of our products out there. I'll explain a little bit more about them in a minute. Our headquarters building at Luton. As Richard mentioned, we've just got a little bit bigger. We're now the largest provider of charging equipment in Europe. We made an acquisition announced this morning, and I'll be disclosing who that is in a couple of minutes. But a little bit about the background of Chargemaster. We were established in 2008, and it's grown pretty rapidly. There's been some government money going into infrastructure, and private money, such as supermarkets investing in infrastructure, to provide the basis for the growth of electric cars that's coming on in the next 10 years. We work very, very closely with two market segments. One is the energy companies, people like British Gas, SSE and EDF, big customers of ours. And also, of course, the motor manufacturers. We work with all the motor manufacturers who've got EVs out at the moment. And they obviously have to invest in infrastructure, not only in their factory buildings, but also in their dealers. We were proud to win a big contract recently to fit out all the Renault factories around Paris, worth about £2 million. We have a wide range of charging products, right from charging equipment at home to rapid charging units, some of which has been mentioned by previous speakers. There is a need for a wide spread of charging equipment, and we develop our own products, we manufacture our own products in the UK. We're also involved in wireless charging, which was also introduced to you by Lord Grayson. We do see this as something that is likely to happen in 4 or 5 years' time. Very attractive because you don't have to worry about plugging your car in. We are deploying in partnership with Qualcomm Halo about 50 points around London for wireless charging in the next year, and Renault are providing the cars for that. So it is something that is coming to the market. Obviously what drives our marketplace ultimately is the advent of electric cars. There's no point in having lots of charging points out there if you haven't got electric cars. And there's been some, if you like, criticism in the press recently, the slow advent of charging points, but it is starting to gain momentum now. The figures show that actually in October there were 3 times the number of electric cars registered in the UK than there were the same month last year. And you'll see in a couple of minutes some of the new cars that are coming on the market in the next 12 months. There's 3 types of electric cars. They all got plugs on, so from a charging equipment manufacturer, they all are potentially require charging equipment. Pure battery electric vehicles with no, just a pure battery. Other plug-in hybrids, such as the plug-in Prius, and extended range electric vehicles such as the Vauxhall Ampera. The fundamental point on all of these, they all need somewhere to charge up. It's interesting actually, people keep saying, well okay, buy an electric car, it's cheap to run and so on, but people don't buy cars on the cost of how much they cost to run typically. They buy them because they make a statement about who they are. They also often are bought by people who want to have some fun in driving them. And what's happening now is you're getting a range of cars that are actually a lot of fun to drive, and practical from a day-to-day point of view. I'm not going to go run through all of these, but just to pick out a few, just to explain why we believe that the market is really starting to gain momentum in the next 12 months or so. There's a few significant cars. The Renault Zoe that you see on the top line there is coming out in the spring. This has a range of about 120, 130 miles, £14,000, so it's priced at a comparable price to, say, a Renault Clio, which is a similar size. This Leaf is going to be built in Sunderland from next spring. They call it the Euroleaf, a slightly more advanced version of the existing Leaf. And they're building, got a production capacity of 50,000 units. So you can see the confidence that Nissan have in the European market. People mention the Tesla earlier on. I'm glad to say our Tesla was delivered in the States. Our Model S was delivered last Friday. It'll be coming over to the UK. That is going to be a game changer in the market. It's the first car with a range, first production car with a range over 250 miles. We do think that market segment will grow. Other significant cars there are the two BMWs you see. I often make the point that actually if you go to a dinner party and someone's just bought a Leaf, they think, oh, okay, that's fine. But if somebody across the table has just bought an electric BMW, that starts to make you think that this market is really happening. BMW are very, very serious about this market. We are working with them a number of ways. And the i3 will be launched in Europe at the end of next year. It's built up from ground level, being very lightweight. With an electric car, you're always fighting against weight, and they are building it as a lightweight, very advanced car with a completely new sub-brand called I, in the same way they've done with the M performance cars or the Mini. Toyota, it's interesting to see with the plug-in Prius is getting a high degree of success with their plug-in version of the Prius. It's interesting, when the Prius came out some 15 years ago, the first 3 years people said, this will never catch on, a hybrid. Why would people buy those? It's more expensive. But last year the Prius was the third most popular car in the world. And we see the same thing happening over the next 10 years with other plug-in vehicles. Why do you need the infrastructure? Well, it sounds obvious, but people forget that in the early days of the internal combustion engine, there weren't petrol stations around, and for a long time people said, how will these things work, because there are no petrol stations. It's exactly the same with electric vehicles, but the technology is slightly different because the energy density of petrol diesel is very high. It's very difficult to refuel an electric car at the speed that you can with a petrol car. So people use them in a slightly different way. They typically, 90% of the time, charge their car either at home or at their workplace. And we work with supermarkets such as Asda, Waitrose and so on. We're fitting out every single Asda store in the country with charging equipment. Also places like train stations and so on. But principally, home and workplace is where you will charge your car in the same way as you charge your mobile phone. Most people plug in their mobile phone at night when they go to bed. Exactly the same with your electric car. And actually, that's the best way to maximise the use of the national grid and indeed save money, because you often get a low tariff for your electricity at the middle of the night. The market for charging equipment is growing rapidly at the moment and is forecast to grow even more rapidly over the next 8 years. A number of research companies have done work on this, and the one we've got here is a company called Pipe Research based in the States, and it shows the growth from 2012 on the bottom left-hand corner there to 2020. Expected to grow, this is the European market, to about 1.2 billion euros by that stage. And as you can see, split between the various different types of charging equipment, from residential, commercial, DC, rapid charging, to wireless, you see in the blue at the top there. We build equipment, we design and build equipment in all those market segments. And it's growing at a rate of about 40% per annum. We expect our next year growth to be in that order. And the forecast is a 20-fold increase in size by 2020. And this is why us at Chargemaster are very interested in this marketplace. We have got experts in technology, but fundamentally we're business people. We see this infrastructure growth market that we're very excited about. Okay, so our acquisition. Well, yesterday afternoon we signed a deal to buy the number 2 player in the UK marketplace, a company called Elektromotive. Very complementary, I'll be talking about that in a minute, but many of you might have seen the Elektromotive charging points around London. They were some of the first ones. At places like Berkeley Square have charging points, very elegant design, and they were the first to build commercial charging points in Europe back in 2003. It hugely strengthens our position because the 2 companies together, they've got strengths in different areas, and it makes us the largest player in Europe. Other players, and as I mentioned, this is becoming quite a mature marketplace, and it's not unusual at this stage to get consolidation. In terms of the UK, we have just under half the market, about 3,000 units that we have deployed across the UK. Elektromotive, you can see, a little bit smaller than us, another company called Pod Point, smaller again, and there's 2 or 3 other players that are also active in the UK market. So you can see that the 2 companies together have a very dominant position. We are very ambitious. We see this as a huge opportunity to deploy infrastructure right across Europe and other parts of the world. And we have distribution channels partners in Europe as well as the UK. We work with one of our fellow speakers earlier on spoke about Holland. We sell in partnership with an energy company over there called Vattenfall. We sell charging equipment to the city of Amsterdam. If you buy an EV in Amsterdam, you can apply to the city to have a charging point put on the street outside your house. And you'll see about 400 of our charging points in Amsterdam if you go over there. Elektromotive is strong in Belgium, so we have more opportunities in Belgium. We have a subsidiary company in France, as I mentioned earlier on. We work very closely with Renault. We're also selling to countries such as Austria, Switzerland and Germany through a partnership. So the European market is our home. We also have benefits or economies of scale with Elektromotive. Obviously we'll be increasing our production capacity by 50 or 60%, and we'll have economies of scale with some of the components in the unit. So overall it's a very exciting opportunity. We're based in Luton. We have our headquarters functions there. Elektromotive is based in Brighton. We'll be keeping the facility at Brighton, but moving some of the head office functions to Luton. We're very excited about that opportunity. Just looking at where we stand in Europe, we do see it as a European market. We do some work in other countries, other continents such as the States, but primarily 80% of our turnover will come from Europe over the next 10 years. You look at the top bar chart. On the left, the blue column is sales this year, estimated sales this year of charging points. We're the blue column. The next purple red column is Elektromotive, and there are other players along there. Many of them, it's a mixture, interesting marketplace because there's a mixture of subsidiaries of major electronics companies, such as Siemens, Schneider, and energy companies like RWE. Few small players, as a company in France called DBT, but you can see it's a mixture of different shapes and sizes of companies. That's the situation as at yesterday, effectively. The situation today is that the combined Chargemaster Elektromotive by far is the largest player, and you can see the other companies alongside that. Now, how's that going to evolve in the future? Well, that forecast that Pipe Research put there, 1.2 billion, is obviously a very significant marketplace for the next 8 years. We're very focused on maintaining our share of that. We do expect further consolidation in the marketplace. Maybe that some of the big multinationals, people like GE and Siemens, really get aggressive and come in. Obviously, we would potentially be an acquisition target of them at that stage. But our position of making this acquisition is, I think, a very strong strategic move for the company, and we're looking forward very much to the growth that it gives us over the next few years. We have strong management, very experienced in putting infrastructure out there, strong financial management, and I think we're very well positioned for a British company to take a lead in this marketplace. So that concludes what I have to say, but I'd be very happy to take any questions that I can.
I lived and worked in Scandinavia nearly 40 years ago, I have to admit. And certainly in Finland in those days, and I guess probably Sweden and Norway, they used to have electric charging points so you could heat the oil in the summer in winter. So you've got an infrastructure that you could retrofit. Is that a target for you or not?
Yes, we're very aware of that. It's, the Scandinavian market is a very exciting market for electric vehicles. One of my sales director was in Norway yesterday, working with some partners over there. And obviously some of the charging equipment for charging at home can be sort of co-used for heating the batteries. So don't think it's relevant to further south in Europe, but it is certainly something that's been very well established in Northern Europe.
So your technology could potentially replace what's there?
Yeah, you can treat yourself. There is, charging equipment gets more and more sophisticated. As charging rates get faster, the unit, the charging point has to communicate with the car. There's a communication protocol called Mode 3. So the car effectively tells the charging point how much charge it can take. And as we heard earlier on, you can have charging rates so the car will charge up in 20 minutes. So it has to be a bit more sophisticated than a simple plug to switch on a heater.
Well, congratulations on the acquisition, David. Congratulations on getting a dominant position in Europe. So what's your strategy for Asia and the United States? I mean, how do you develop from that very strong base in Europe into those other two global markets?
Well, I think the answer in one word is cautiously. We're very strong in Europe, and we think we've got, as we can see, for a market size that's growing very rapidly, Europe's going to be a great opportunity for us. Each of the two continents you mentioned, America and Asia, have got different characteristics. The USA is effectively barred to anybody from outside because the Obama administration 4 years ago threw a lot of money at domestic companies to give equipment away effectively. So we cannot seriously go into the States at the moment until that money runs out, which will probably be another year or so. Asia is a interesting market. A lot of electric vehicles are going to be coming out of China, or being sold in China, largely for domestic use. The charging equipment in Asia tends to be very simple and low cost. We do see opportunities in the future, but obviously by the very nature of the market there, they have cost advantages already by assembling over there. So I'm not saying never, but certainly our focus in the next 4 or 5 years is going to be Europe. Gentleman over there.
I guess Elektromotive is a UK company. You said they're headquartered in Brighton. Is that right?
Yes, they're based in Brighton, yes.
So sort of two UK companies. UK will be one of the larger EV markets in Europe, but not necessarily the largest one. There aren't really any domestic car manufacturers here, and they're sort of key parts of the puzzle. Did you think about making an acquisition in one of those other large markets with perhaps large domestic OEMs which are also maybe a little bit more advanced in EV generally, or did this sort of tick all of the boxes? Sorry, you're probably going to say tick all the boxes because that's what you do after you make an acquisition, but if you can try to go beyond the sort of standard response, and also your own view on the which markets are really going to be the key ones in the next 3 to 5 years, which countries in Europe specifically?
Well, 2 or 3 questions there. I'd be happy to try to get through each of them. We obviously been a little bit opportunistic. The fact that Elektromotive we knew was an ideal target for us. They made an approach to us and we took advantage of that. And it gives us a platform for growth. They've been long established, they've got good relationships. We certainly wouldn't rule out in the future another acquisition in Europe. I'm actually seeing another company next week at the very early stage. So that hopefully answers that question. To tackle a market, say in France or the Netherlands, doesn't necessarily mean to say you've got to be based locally. We've set up a French subsidiary because it helps if you're selling to the French to have a French company and French-speaking staff. In terms of the market development, well, it's inevitable. Sorry, so I don't know what country you come from, but the existing car market in Europe is dominated by Germany. And the German manufacturers are typically doing very, very well compared with, say, the French manufacturers. Interesting that sales in the UK are doing particularly well. We're leading the growth or the stability of sales in the UK at the moment. But in, say, a snapshot in 5 years' time, the leading company for EV sales will undoubtedly be Germany. BMW, as I mentioned in the presentation, are coming to market. Daimler are focused on plug-in hybrids. They will still have a plug, so they still need charging. And people, obviously, Volkswagen, the other big player, is also going to be in the marketplace. They're a little bit reluctant. German cars tend to be powerful and big, which is so it took a little bit of time for them to come to the EV market, but they're certainly going that route, particularly BMW in the near term.